making up some jam from last year's jam, emptying out the freezers. You know, getting ready for some stuff coming in here soon. We got honeyberries coming in soon. We gotta make some room. What you gonna do? We got some strawberries coming in soon. What you gonna do? We got some cherries coming in soon. Oh, what you gonna do? Yeah, I know. So, today, we're doing a show here where we're bringing this recording here. It's Marc Williams. We recorded earlier in April. Your host, here, Ande the Elf, and Liz Virgo, put this together. Recorded with Marc Williams, an ethnobotanist. Fascinating conversation. Known the bro for a while. We go back to, found some of our ways in which we've woven and back with the stories of life and the journeys, even like knowing adventures we've probably, hung out well before internet stuff was happening. We were discovering plants, and he took this amazing route and discovered ethnobotany, and we get to discuss with him a lot of the different places he's been. We talk about some amazing, cool stuff here. Looking forward to the show. We're gonna jam out a little bit more here for you. It's the Jam Band podcast, so what can you do? Drop a link to the show, connect up with us, support the show, drop something in the Cash App link, somewhere in there, put up a show together, you want us to come do a show, we're down, we'll probably, let's see how it connects to Wake the Farm Up. Got some amazing shows coming up here soon. got Marc Williams with us today, and Liz Virgo, and Ande the elf.
Hey everybody, wake the farm up.
Let's all give a big round of applause and welcome Marc Williams. Woo-hoo. So exciting. Everybody's dancing out there. This is great. It kind of takes me, so first time, just to introduce Marc here. First time I really remember meeting Marc Williams was getting to really talk with him at the Paw Paw Festival several years back. He had presented on the same stage that I had presented there. We got to talk a lot, and I was fascinated by his take and perspective and studies of ethnobotany, and had come to find out he had even graduated from the same school that my brother had with a sustainable ag degree. Is that correct, Marc?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to dive in a lot here. He's been working with botany every day. He's been working with plantsandhealers.org and working with United Plant Savers, among other lots of marvelous organizations. And to speak of marvelous, I want to quote him here. He's been working with the marvelous world of people and their interface with other organisms, which is perfect for the Wake the Farm Up show. We are always trying to connect humans into the greater ecosystem, and I'm so fascinated and happy to hear and share, and I'm excited to hear what we get into here, Marc.
Likewise.
So, what do you want to go into first? Maybe tell everybody here at Wake the Farm Up what an ethnobotanist is, like a real quick haiku on that, just to make sure everybody's on the page. We got people here that are very knowledgeable and wise in herbs and plant lore and homesteading, but we're also welcoming everybody in here that's just learning about everything as we go. So, tell us a little bit about an ethnobotanist.
Yeah, well, welcome one and all. And ethnobotany is kind of a fancy scientific way of saying the study of the interface between people and plants. So ethnology is the science that studies various different cultural groups. You think of ethnicities, kind of related to things like anthropology and sociology. Botany, of course, is the science of studying plants. And so ethnobotany combines those two sciences together and looks at various different traditions with plants, from food to medicine to ritual to the support of different other organisms within an ecosystem, that kind of thing. And it's itself a subset of the science of ethnobiology, with biology being the study of all different life forms, and mycology for mushrooms, and ornithology for birds, and entomology for insects. So ethnobiologists study that interface across these various different planes of life forms and people.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
Beyond
love it.
Plants. Beyond plants, even.
Yeah, I always have a fondness for ethnobotanists. I've met a few of you all, and you all are so wonderfully knowledgeable. I personally studied anthropology and cultural anthropology in college, and it really excites me. I didn't know about ethnobotany at the time, but coming out into the world a little later and becoming really interested and fascinated in plants and stuff, it's really exciting to know about the field of ethnobotany, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Well, yeah, happy to share it. It's interesting that it's pretty hard to actually get a degree in ethnobotany, or certainly ethnobiology. And a lot of people that do get degrees as ethnobotanists actually go through anthropology programs.
Interesting, yeah.
Cool, yeah. I can imagine, personally, considering, if I was going to go on with anthropology, it's okay, professorship can be difficult, and anthropology positions in and of themselves can be difficult, but I think ethnobotany, with the rise in herbalism, and with how there's really biodiversity everywhere, and any, even just in my garden right now, I could go and have a whole study So I think ethnobotany might be a lot more accessible for people these days.
Yeah, certainly, and obviously within academia for sure, but everybody interacts with plants to some degree, right? And for food, and most of the people in the world also for medicine. So certainly of interest to one and all.
Yeah, so right now when we live in this really interesting time where, certain like Black Studies programs, to be specific, and other cultural programs are being attacked and undervalued, this is a kind of a really wonderful way that, actually cultural studies are coming in all different forms. We might take away these different programs, but through understanding cultures through plants, that's a little bit of I'm interested in the side alleys right now. I'm interested in the side ways of how people are going to continue to preserve cultural information under the context of removal of books and things from schools.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring up Black Studies, because if there was any subject I would focus on for a PhD, it would be the ethnobotany of Affrilachian. Basically, the ethnobotany of the Black people of the Appalachian and Appalachian regions. And that's something that I feel like is often overlooked, both the contributions of Black folks in Appalachia in general, and certainly within the plant tradition specifically.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, is there any specific examples of some Affrilachian contributions to modern herbalism? I'm really curious. I have plants from all the continents of the world in my homestead, and there's definitely not as much information or researchable about the African herbs that grow here. But also even just finding the information about the Affrilachian, and how Black culture has influenced our modern conglomeration of herbs and where we're at in our modern day.
Yeah, it's hard to come by. I mean, when I went to grad school for my master's degree, I went to Appalachian State University, and the focus was Appalachian Studies, so kind of like right in the sweet spot for that interest. And the whole top floor of this huge library is all about Appalachia. But within that, it's a pretty small subset of information about African American folks in Appalachia. And there is a guy who did his graduate work named Ed Cabell, who kind of tried to put together a resource for various different studies that have been done for the Black folks of the area, but that's not necessarily specific to plants. And one of the areas that I'm most excited for currently is to look into the archives of Foxfire, because they have over 1,000 hours, I think, or over 1,000 interviews at least of people. And a lot of those folks are African American, and they just came out with a book about women in Appalachia. And within that book, a number of African American folks are featured, and they do talk some about, gardens and a little bit about medicinal plant traditions, but it's definitely somewhat few and far between, and something that's really in need of getting aggregated from a lot of disparate sources.
So you are saying there is a publication that is selected interviews from Foxfire that is all women? Or
yeah.
Okay.
It just came out, and within that there are a number of African American women that are featured.
Cool. I'll look at that. I love the Foxfire books, and I've actually been lucky and fortunate enough to see the Foxfire at least once, the actual mycelium that they name those books after.
Ah, yeah.
Have you gotten to see that before?
I have seen that a little bit, yep.
It's amazing. It's like lightning on the ground.
Cool. Well, you'll have to show me sometime.
Oh, I hope it's like one of those things. It's like I've seen it once in my day.
Okay.
It's got to be the right spot, right moment. You just got to be out there in the dark and be like, wow, why is the ground flashing? Like, do you guys all see this too?
Wow. Cool. This is definitely new to me. So yeah, this really excites me, the topic in general. So It's interesting you should say, if you were to do a PhD, you would do it in Black Studies. In college I studied cultural anthropology and Pan-African studies. So I was really specifically excited to be interviewing you today. I read your article on the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine, and it's really exciting to see the work that you're doing, educating people about African herbs and about the diaspora and how we have really influenced and transformed this country and herbalism within this country. I'm also just beginning to read Leah Penniman's new book, Black Earth Wisdom. And I've learned so much already in just the Roman numerals. I've just gotten to page 1, and my mind is blown. I have been a lay herbalist for the last few years, I would say, just taking care of myself and my children with herbs that I have learned actually in the Appalachian setting from Black women. I went to the Southeast Wise Women's Herbal Conference in 2019, and they really made a point to feature some Black and Indigenous herbalists there. I was blessed to learn from Amanda David, who I will soon be attending her School of People's Medicine school. So, anyways, with all that being said, what is probably well known to you was really exciting news to me reading in Leah Penniman's book about, how names that I've known for a long time, like Fannie Lou Hamer and Booker T. Washington and Harriet Tubman, Zora Neale Hurston, so many names that have been in my awareness, but not as herbalists, not as these earth defenders. It's really amazing to look at our history and to understand how much we really have shaped this country.
Yes, that's so true. And Zora Neale Hurston, in particular, as an anthropologist, really wrote a lot about the African American traditions throughout the South.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, yeah. And I kind of am amused because I'm technically from Appalachian, but you hear the way I say it. I'm from the Maryland Appalachian region, so we don't have like the Appalachia history per se, but I have spent some time living in, I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, so not quite in the Appalachia area, but just always kind of adjacent. And my personal experience with my family being part of the Great Migration when, millions of African Americans left the South due to how harsh the Jim Crow conditions were. They were originally farmers and were originally really connected to the land, but that connection was severed within the migration to the north. So for me, it's really fascinating to be kind of just being constantly called back and pulled back to this region in these ways, in some sort of ancestral way that I could have never imagined. I wasn't asking for this. In my young 20s, I wanted to be a rapper. I wanted to live in New York City. But for some reason, I'm just getting called back and back and back to the plants. And
Yo, wake the farm up. Bust a rhyme for us, Liz.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Miss Chief. It wouldn't be Liz Virgo. It would be Miss Chief. That was my moniker, but I'm not in that space right now. But anyways, it's really, really cool and exciting to be to have read your work and to be making these type of connections now. And I'm see that you were on the board of United Plant Savers, and I'm curious about how you got involved with United Plant Savers.
Yeah, well, I can certainly relate with the idea of a life path and an arc that maybe hasn't unfolded as one might have imagined, and that's certainly the case for me. I mean, I was raised my whole upbringing to be an officer in the military. Went away to college initially with a 4-year ROTC scholarship, and so it's been a long path. And I would say, as far as the United Plant Savers part of that path, it's been a couple of decades now of involvement that I've had in various different ways. And I first moved to the Asheville area of North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains in '99, and pretty quickly after that, learned about United Plant Savers, especially through the auspices of plant rescues, which is something that happens when development is going to occur in an area where threatened or unusual, and especially medicinal plants, which is what United Plant Savers focuses most on. When those things are in the path of development, then folks will go out and transplant them to other suitable habitats so that they don't get destroyed. And so I started doing that around 20 years ago, and since then I've participated in various different programs that they offer, and that has kind of culminated in being on the board of directors, which actually just cycled off of in December. It's 3-year terms on their board of directors, and after 3 years it was clear to me that I needed to consolidate my energy a little bit. But I am headed up there to their sanctuary that's hundreds of acres in southeast Ohio. Coming up within a couple weeks, there is a board meeting there that I'm going to be part of to some degree, and also a big training. As United Plant Savers initially started with a focus on North America, but as time has gone on, has moved to focus more internationally, and there's a big organization called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN for short, and they're the folks that make up the determinations globally for threatened and endangered species. And most of the things that they've looked at are animals as far as different species goes, and plants can sometimes get the short shrift, and then medicinal plants as a subset of that as well. And so United Plant Savers is really stepping up to try to at least look at the different plants that we've taken note of as being potentially threatened and endangered, and put it through this IUCN rubric. And so there's a training happening at the United Plant Savers Sanctuary in Rutland, Ohio, coming up shortly for that.
An interesting decades of interactions with UPS for me as well. I remember when I was doing a herbal study training out with Hocking College back in the late 90s, going over and working with Paul Strauss out there, and I had no idea until years later that we were his first class that he was taking on.
Oh wow.
So it's fascinating, we have a friendship still, and I remember seeing him on that stage that you and I shared there at the Ohio Paw Paw Festival. Just a lot of fascinating connections and times in which our trails have crossed paths just with passion and carrying what we carry out there. Something I wanted to ask you about in the plantsandhealers.org, when you look at it, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Frank Cook, see if you would share a little bit about him. And one of my questions was, because I feel like I might have had a class with him in the 90s at a rainbow gathering. Could that have been possible?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, he certainly went to the rainbow gatherings in the 90s and was leading walks there, and that's certainly one of the initial exposures that I had to Frank as well. Was we were at 1995 regional rainbow gathering in Florida, and I guess that's kind of a couple of things, though, to unpack, is like both who is Frank Cook and kind of his legacy, and then what are rainbow gatherings for folks that might not be familiar.
We'll stick with Frank Cook a little bit more. Rainbow gathering, that's, every person that goes to one will have their own definition of what that is. And different time periods, it'll be a whole different story. 1995 compared to 2015 will be a whole different story.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I wrote a whole paper, actually, when I was in college about rainbow. But there is a website, welcomehome.org, that people could dive in deep with that if they're interested. But they happen all over the country and also in other countries internationally. And an aspect of that is often an educational component. And the great thing about rainbow is that it's encouraged not to have money, and so pretty much people volunteer to do everything that makes a society work, including the education. So it's a great way to learn about plants, potentially, and the big national one is in July and in a different state each year. So for many years, I went to the national one in Utah and Wyoming and California and Washington, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, on. And Frank is somebody who went to pretty much every national for quite a while, would lead plant walks every day there, and he would sometimes do that with other people as well, and I would sometimes be his assistant. And as much as that was one part of Frank's legacy, there's a huge amount of other parts too, because he traveled all over the world learning from different people and teaching thousands of people what he had learned. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2009 in August. And in his passing, there was this big vacuum created in lots of different communities, and a nonprofit started to both archive his work and continue it forward. And that is no longer a going concern, like an active nonprofit, but there is the website that you mentioned, plantsandhealers.org, that has all that documentation and archival material, and that's also something that's on Facebook, and also my only thing that I interact with for Instagram is keeping up the Plants and Healers Instagram. But Frank wrote a lot about his experiences, and most of that's available to download for free, and had lots of cool recipes for food, had a great philosophy of life too, of how can we be more sustainable. He was one of the first people to bring transition culture to the U.S. from England, because he was over in England getting his master's degree at Schumacher College. Transition culture. Yeah, it's kind of...
Is that like when, I remember there was a movement for a while they called like Transition Town, where there's a big movement to get more bike trails and nature into the urban areas, and pedestrian friendly zones and food in our cities. Yeah.
All of it, and it's global, and to some degree it's taken root and flourished in some places more than others, and it seems like in the U.S. somewhat less so, but it's kind of a relative, I would say, to permaculture, which a lot of people would be familiar with. And permaculture focuses a lot on food generation and the infrastructure, for energy and water and these kinds of things. And the transition culture kind of focuses more on the sociology piece and like how to make initiatives in your community, at the government level or through nonprofits and other activism. And also a big thing with transition culture that I really gravitated towards is like, how can we have these changes be as much a party as it is like a protest? Yeah. That so much of what we want, another way to frame it is to thrive, not just survive.
Hope Day preppers.
Yeah, so often these things are framed as like last ditch, only, if necessary kind of things, whereas a lot of these skills and ways of being are just so comforting and heartwarming and supportive in many other ways besides just getting our basic needs met.
Right.
Yes, wake the farm up.
Wake the farm up. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been a friend of mine recently introduced the term solidarity economy to me, and it's a thought that I've been exploring. I think a lot of us, have had some experiences with intentional community and really just trying to reshape. It's interesting living in a capitalist society with a lot of, there's certain forces that we have to navigate and in the social structure that we have to navigate, but there really is a lot of movement towards alternative ways of being, towards, as you said, more heartwarming ways of living, more, you can call it holistic, but I think it's really important to note that it's not just holistic for the sake of being holistic. It's not just sustainable for the sake of the environment. It's also emotionally sustainable.
Yeah, very much so. Just as important as the physical as well. And I was just thinking, Andy, I'm wondering, when you were at Hocking, were you taking a class with Rebecca?
Oh, yeah, Rebecca Wood. Yeah,
Rebecca Wood, huh?
Rebecca Wood, she's a wonderful teacher. We still connect and share and learn from each other today.
It's good. Just so many full circle things. I can remember growing up reading like Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons and playing Magic the Gathering, all these things which are now kind of like having a renaissance. And I always wanted to be an elf though. So here I'm talking with Andy the elf, and then I moved to Asheville, and one of my earliest, fastest friends was your brother Jeremy, and then this whole kind of parallel path we've had with United Plant Savers, and I've known also Rebecca for probably close to 14 or 15 years now, and I just love what a small world it is when you're on the path sometimes.
Right. I remember connecting with you, Bunny, at a festival called Connection Family.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Is that what it was called, right? Connection Family Camp Out. And it was a really fun family festival that was near Asheville.
Yeah.
Lots of amazing workshops. I remember you were doing some workshops. I did some plant workshops. There's a lot of amazing poetry. But yeah, just like you're mentioning connections. I know that's something you and I have cross-pollinated in the world in the realms of festivals and education too, bringing this kind of information to people that are gathering there and making it into a party.
Exactly. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, that you can be having fun and learning simultaneously.
So what other festival kind of things have you been into that are still going for you? Like, I think I connected with you at Firefly the one year I was there. Do you go to Firefly? That's in Asheville.
I do. I pretty much go to Firefly every year, and Firefly is a subset of whether, at least historically called primitive skills gatherings, more commonly now called earth skills gatherings. And this is another one that's way up there in my estimation for people to at least experience once, kind of like the Rainbow Gathering. I feel like it's just so eye-opening, although the earth skills gatherings are really focused on building people's skills specifically. And there's certainly music and dancing and some partying, but the real focus is on having everybody get their basic skills down, whether that's plant identification or how to make a basket from wild materials or carve a spoon or make a bowl or tan a hide or...
I did hear they have a stage there now. I know when I was there, the nighttime evening entertainment was around a fire.
Yeah,
so that sounds like it's evolved.
There is a stage. I was there last year. Were you there last year, Mark?
I was, and it is amplified. I don't think it was really amplified initially, with that kind of idea of, the primitive nature of, not having electrification. But they've kind of stepped it up since then. But different gatherings will have different levels of that. And there is a whole Google map. If somebody Googled Earth Skills Gathering map, then or whatever search engine of your choice, then you can see like from the northwest to the southwest, the northeast to the southeast, and places in between.
So you would go to Google Maps and just type in Earth Skills.
I think even into a search engine. I haven't done it in a minute, but you can put Earth Skills.
Gotcha.
But I'd say Firefly is a super special gathering. Firefly, was my first, actually probably the only Earth Skills gathering that I've been to so far. I went there last year, and it completely changed my life. I mean, Firefly is really the reason that I'm here. I started to make a really good friendship with Rob Greenfield, now going by Robin Greenfield, at the time, who really introduced me into foraging and actually took me pawpaw foraging. Funny how you all are talking about the pawpaw festival, and really showed me how to forage, and I started posting about it a lot more and made a connection with Ande, and who we've been acquainted for years, but really developed into a friendship after my experience at Firefly. It's funny, I remember the first fire, the opening fire on the first day of Firefly. They asked how many people had been there before and asked if Firefly had changed their lives, and so many people raised their hands, and I was a little skeptical. I was kind of judging them a little bit, like, oh yeah, right, did it change your life that much? Let me tell you, my whole life has changed since Firefly, and it's all been for the better.
Yeah, I can relate. I definitely look forward to it every year. I'm super grateful to be part of it, and it's interesting to watch the evolution, because it was born from a gathering that's been happening significantly longer, that happens both in the spring and the fall. It's called Rivertane Rendezvous in the spring and Falling Leaves in the fall, and that inspired Firefly, and then Firefly inspired both the Florida Earth Skills Gathering and the Piedmont Earth Skills Gathering. And so it's almost like when you're culturing a food product, you know, and you put a little starter into a society, and then it just like grows from there. And I'd say that being the case, Firefly is still my favorite one, and definitely the one that I go to the most.
You know, just exploring the name Firefly, I think it's kind of a fascinating phenomenon. I look for the phenomenons of nature every day, and fireflies, lightning bugs, whatever you want to call them, are some of the most fascinating things that you can only witness in real life. You can't send somebody a picture of it. You can't send somebody a photo of it or there's no other feeling than actually being in the woods, experiencing it.
Yeah, and it also it's all part of sense of place, because the Firefly Gathering happens when the fireflies start to come out too.
A phenomenon I saw in our area here in the Ohio River Valley last year was an insane amount of lightning bugs. That's what I call them. And I feel that it's because prior to that, the year before when they came, the 17-year cicada had came. So a lot more predators that would normally be eating some lightning bugs were just snarfing down cicadas and crushing those. So I feel like the lightning bugs had a huge population surge the next year.
Nice. I was amazed also at how many different kinds of fireflies there are. They have their own field guide, you know, and they're the blue ghost fireflies and the intermittent fireflies, and it's a fascinating deep dive when you get into the minutia of the different habitats and the different kinds and the different colors they have.
What do you have a favorite style lightning bug?
The blue ghost, I think, is amazing. They're a woodland and they're low to the ground and they move really slow, so it's very ethereal.
Do they do that J stroke? You know
they just kind of like float very softly, very slowly, like just a few feet above the ground in the woods by the water at about 3,000 foot elevation where we live.
Wow, cool. I need to go and find out this year exactly which kind of lightning bugs are around me. They do a J stroke. I know that they kind of like to attract a mate, the males fly in a J shape, at least the ones that live near me. And you can't always see the J shape, you have to be at the right angle, but then you'll see it. But there's so many of them, you can close your eyes and it's like one of those day tripper toys, you know, where there's like a strobe light on your eyelids, and you can kind of start seeing those colors, like, you know, when you get like you rub your eyes too much or something, but it's just coming from the light. Love that.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to seeing you at Firefly this year.
Yes, likewise.
What kind of workshops will you be doing there this year? You might not know yet.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there actually is. They just kind of opened up the whole registration process for that, and I tend to do one that's on woody plants, like the trees and the shrubs and the vines and their uses, and one that's on botany by family. It kind of helps people simplify their field botany experience. And then the third one, it's a little bit up for grabs. I have a friend I've collaborated with sometimes named Robert Itis, who's one of the first people that turned me on to Plant Savers. Sounds like he might want to do something. And last year I also did a bilingual class with my friend Mama Tortuga that was in English and Spanish.
That's really cool.
So yeah, we might bring that one back around. But typically it's 3 classes is a full load for most teachers, so that's probably what I'll do.
That's good.
Yeah, I remember sharing space with Mama Tortuga. Yeah, and I think I do think I saw your class going by, and I think I actually kind of got distracted and wanted to join your class because I'm always loving Spanish language, and I was like, oh my gosh, learning about plants in Spanish, this couldn't be more amazing. But I was already in the middle of my own workshop. But
yeah, that's how it goes. That's why you gotta keep coming back.
Right.
There's always, especially if you're a teacher, there's always a lot happening while you're otherwise occupied.
Yeah, I really didn't know what I was getting into when I went to Firefly either. Actually, like it was just my husband at the time, now ex-husband, was wanting to go, and I just went. I had a child who was barely 1 at the time, and another kid who was 3 years old. I wasn't paying attention to anything. He kept talking to me about going to some blacksmithing thing. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want a blacksmith, but I do love camping. Then I went there. I'm like, this is the most amazing place. I love this.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great thing is you can choose your own adventure so easily because there's so many options there.
Yeah, and it was such a kid-friendly space. It was really wonderful as a, having children that young, it's really easy to just stay at home and give up and say traveling's not possible, going to festivals isn't possible, but they created a safe space, and I'm going to be talking to them about my ticket later this week, actually, because I'm a scholarship participant, and hopefully I'm going to try to convince them to let me teach the kids yoga.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Well, you guys are making me really wish that I could doppelganger myself and go to the Firefly this year, but I don't know if I want to say unfortunately, but I'm going to be up in the electric forest.
Yeah, not unfortunate at all. So exciting.
That sounds like a good consolation prize.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully, I don't know, I'm going to encourage you, Liz, to pick up some recordings while you're down at Firefly, and we'll mix them with some electric forest recordings. I know I'll be at the V-Dub Lounge doing some recordings with people there and at the electric forest. And we'll get Fireflies lit up with some electric forest vibes all at the same time. That could be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. So, whether you're up north or in the Asheville area, Wake the Farm Up will be around.
Wicked fun.
I've always wanted to go to electric forest maybe one day. Make it up there.
Nice. Yeah, I've never been before, and I've been asked to go and do some things there, so I look forward to it. Yeah.
Electric Forest was my very first festival when I was like 18 years old. Rothbury.
Wow.
Rothbury, yeah. Bringing a loop back to Hawking College, their phrase at the time, I think it probably still is where nature meets technology. And so, an electric forest is quite that scenario.
Yeah, I bet there's a whole little subfield of ethnobotany about that too.
Northern Michigan. I would love to explore a little bit more in the time we have with you, Mark, on ethnobotany, and perhaps I know you've traveled to 30 different countries, every state, and I know the whole time you've been passionate about this work, so you've been studying this concepts of the integration with humans and the organisms around them. would love to hear a lot more about that. You could get specific about a plant or broad as you want about the whole experience, like what an overview of that feel is. Love to hear more about that, though.
All right. Yeah, it is definitely potentially very broad. As we were saying earlier, pretty much every person has some relationship with plants to greater or lesser degree, and I spent a lot of time focusing more outward and internationally when I was running the nonprofit Plants and Healers International, and basically continuing in Frank's tradition, wherein he would go to places and learn as much as he could from the local people there, write about his experiences, and then start to lead tours to these various places, whether that might be South Africa or India or Costa Rica or Peru. And so something that came up in his passing was to continue that, and in particular I've done a lot of work in Central America, mostly focused in Costa Rica, and South America, mostly focused in Peru, and then in the Caribbean, focused in Jamaica. And as one might imagine, I mean, each one of those places in and of itself then has a whole multitude of various traditions. In Costa Rica, it's probably one particular area within it. It's probably like the runner-up as far as PhD subjects. There's this Caribbean part of Costa Rica near Panama, where you have, of course, Ticos and Ticas, as the Costa Rican folks call themselves, but then also indigenous people, the Bribri and the Cabacar, who live there as well. And then you have all of this legacy of Jamaican folks that actually were brought over to work the agriculture and to some degree build the railroad that shipped the agriculture out. And then there's folks from all over the world as well. They've settled into this little area, Puerto Viejo, Manzanillo, or Cahuita, or some of the towns there. And to me, it was just fascinating to have, you know, these kind of four disparate groups: the Latinidad of Costa Rica, the indigenous folks, the black folks, and then this whole swath of people from all over using the same plants but in different ways. And so that's something that I've studied quite a bit. And similarly in the Andes, you of course have indigenous traditions very strong there with the Quechua folks and lots of other folks that have moved in over time. So like just really trying to learn those traditions, share about those traditions, and in particular in regards to our basic needs like food, and within that wild foods and forms of fermentation have been some things I've really focused on learning and teaching. Yeah, but
it seems like most cultures that are close to their traditional culture have some form of fermenting food as a way to preserve a harvest, but also, you know, for the health benefits. And it's, you know, it's fascinating how all these little things link together to make up their diets. Like I always think about how, like a fairly traditional German diet, you think of like sausage and sauerkraut, and it's amazing how the sage in the sausage helps you digest the meat as well as the sauerkraut does. But you know, you can think like 800 years ago, people weren't sitting around like, oh, I need my sauerkraut for my gut flora.
Yeah, it's true. It's fascinating, even much more recent in the time of the big ships of exploration, that they figured out sauerkraut could keep people from getting scurvy if they just gave a ration to the sailors periodically, you know, and wasn't necessarily with the knowledge of vitamin C or certainly of microbes, but, you know, it worked, and people figured it out. And like you said, as near as I can tell, just about every indigenous group on the planet has some tradition of fermentation as part of their process with eating for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites more recently has been mezcal. just in small amounts. But that smoky flavor, somehow a little sip of it takes me into a sauna kind of healing place. And it's really strange when a fermented alcoholic drink can do that for me.
Yeah, and of course different alcohols have different feelings for people, even though in theory, like chemically wise, it's the same thing, liquor, but depending on the source, some people resonate more or less. And of course there are a lot of big, strong traditions within cultural groups around what you do with alcohol ritually.
I think that's a fascinating aspect of ethnobotany too, is not just looking at like this plant's edible or medicinal, but like how else is it brought into the culture? How like the spiritual practices of a culture. So
the art and the iconography, the psycho-spiritual emotional piece is often just as important as food. As far as people's well-being in the long term.
Yeah. I'm not sure where the question is and what I'm going to say. Maybe I'll find a question in it. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by the use of herbs and especially like Orisha traditions and offerings to ancestors, and there's always things like smudges and all that. I have had some exposure to Yoruba priestesses and priests, and not nearly as much as I would like. I think, as I was saying, there's a huge disconnect for me and for a lot of African American people in this country from our history. And I have such a curiosity and such a fascination with the way those herbs would have been used and all that, but also a little bit of just not being sure where to look sometimes. So it's really great to see your work online and to see that there are resources and that people are still preserving that information. But a question I do kind of have, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but it's interesting to hear you talking about your travels and going to Costa Rica and all this. And I imagine that your education and your profession kind of puts you in a position where you're able to be connected to certain cultures and go with the intention of learning about the plants. But I'm wondering for somebody more like me, somebody would just love to go and learn about the cultures and the plants, but doesn't necessarily have a reason to be invited in that context. How would you recommend people go and travel and learn about plants and culture?
And just kind of side onto that, you're mentioning of going places and learning and writing and then leading tours. Maybe tie a little bit more a plug into the tours that you might lead that could be available.
Yeah, okay. So, first and foremost, I think I'm out of the tour business, actually.
Cool.
Maybe the toughest job I've ever had, and I have so much respect for your brother, Jeremy, because he's been doing it longer and in a much more developed way than I have. And so he's maybe one for folks, especially if they're interested in European adventuring. But as far as Costa Rica and specifically with the Afro-Caribbean tradition that's down there near Panama on the Caribbean side, there's the Wild Ginger Herbal Center. I know they just had a big retreat that my friend and colleague Corey Pine Shane was participating in. So I think that's kind of a regular thing that happens. And
CP dog!
Yeah, CP represent Corey Pine. And then both domestically and also at times in that area, there is an organization that's Natural Choices Botanica is the name of the school, and then the Sacred Waters Retreats are the events that they put on, and this is for and by African American folks. And so there's one that happens near Nashville that's coming up in May. But I know I've participated in African American herbal conferences that they've also put on down in Costa Rica in that same area. And I think of my friend Ande Greer, who's the director of that organization is just an incredible resource who also lectures at lots of other conferences. Kind of makes a circuit just like a band might do for music, So Ande is a great resource in the Sacred Waters events that she puts on, as well as the Gullah Geechee Herbal Conference that's happening this fall, and something I'm really excited to participate in. I haven't been as of yet, but I've had friends go, and definitely looking forward to go and participate in that this year as well. There's quite a number of other folks that do also lead tours as well for people that want to learn about these traditions. I do find it to be way easier to do it that way than to just like kind of set off on your own and just kind of try to figure it out, because it can take time to build these sort of relationships. And, it just really expedites it when you're going with an already known organization that has put in that time and has made like an agenda with the local folks that is both something that will allow you to learn from them, but also, of course, is reciprocating and giving back to them in the best way possible as well.
Circular, yeah.
Very cool, yeah. I appreciate that. I remember I wanted to attend the Gullah Geechee conference. After I went to the Southeast Wise Women Herbal Conference, I got really excited and, of course, wanted to continue. And I remember finding that one online, but it was 2020. And the pandemic hit and I decided not to go. But then just a few weeks ago, I was listening to Herbal Radio, the Mountain Rose Herbs podcast, and I heard the woman who started that conference, and I found out that actually 2020 was the very first year. I didn't even realize that was their first year. And she powered through and she made the conference happen. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get there this fall as well. But I also want to kind of put in a word to people who might be hosting festivals and creating these sorts of events. One really important thing is making these events accessible to people who might not otherwise be able to attend. As I said, Firefly changed my life, and I attended Firefly on a scholarship because I'm a Black Indigenous woman, and there's a lot of, notions that maybe people who are not from European backgrounds aren't interested in this sorts of things, but I promise you, if you create spaces, we will show up. So, and also, a lot of this work was done at the Southeast Wise Women Herbal Conference and stuff. I didn't go there on a scholarship or anything. I'm not sure if that was available at the time, but they did center Black and Indigenous women's voices. They put those speakers and leaders at the forefront and really made a point to honor them, even if it caused some discomfort in other people. So I really encourage people to create scholarships, to invite Black and Brown teachers and students to these types of events.
Well, yeah, for sure. And definitely I would put in a plug for the International Herbal Symposium, which is happening in June at Wheaton College, just south of Boston. That's with an international focus, of course, something that's really trying to be as big a tent as possible, bring as many voices to the table as possible, and definitely something that has a component of scholarships and work trade and other opportunities to make it as accessible as possible.
Awesome. And yeah, and of course these there's so many ways to do the scholarships, and it's I of course am very interested in Black and Brown people, as are my people. Also to people who might express their sexuality or gender identity differently, and even people of European descents who might have limited access to resources or disabilities or differently abled, I should say. We all deserve to have access to information. This information can be life-changing, and I just want to uplift people who are doing the work of making sure that these conferences are inclusive.
Yeah, it's so important. Of course, way past time to try to make these experiences more open and equitable. And oftentimes I think that there is this focus in that regard on race, which is certainly very important. But as you said, whether it's, gender or sexuality or folks that might be neurodivergent or otherwise differently abled, or even getting more young people, into the tent, or even, folks from different classes, because sometimes these things can be too expensive for, folks other than anybody that's doing this professionally is making a lot of money at it. And so, yeah, the more that we can embrace the diversity of as many voices as possible, I think the more holistic any system is going to be that we're developing off of those voices.
Mm-hmm. Ashe.
Yeah. Ashe.
I feel like we've taken, this is the point where Ande usually says, things have gotten too serious. Let's bring back the funniness.
Yeah, if I was going to bring some funny thing, I was going to say, how about those left-handers out there living in a right-handed world?
Yeah.
Yeah. The left-handers and their right minds.
Awesome.
Bumping elbows at every table.
We all deserve a spot at that table, whether we bump elbows or not.
Let's make room. Let's make room and rub elbows with love.
Yes, especially now that we are allowed to be within elbows distance of one another these days.
Yeah, I can't stand being 6 feet away from people.
I do remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was, as I said, I was pretty much a lay herbalist. I was just starting to get into it. I had just gotten back from that conference, and suddenly the world was going to end with herbs. I remember a podcast I was listening to, and somebody said, right now is really the time to trust the herbs. And I've been kind of just having that in my mind, holding that with me the whole time, and the herbs really have carried me so far.
Awesome. Give thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, I want to thank you for joining us on the Wake the Farm Up show for this special 1-on-2 interview, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a pleasure. I imagine, I know already. Look at these people at this show listening to this right now. They've learned so much. I see people there taking notes and all kinds of things. We're going to have some of these different organizations you work with plugged in the footnotes. I really appreciate you. I really want to hang out with you in real life, so I look forward to when we get to cross paths again. And it'd be great to... I know 2020, bringing that up, we were going to be doing a Plant Walkers event up here, and you were going to be heading up to share with the Ohio River Valley region here what we get together and throw down in Cincinnati for Plant Walkers. So I look forward, 3 years later now, that maybe we can put something together again to share this passion and love and party and Hope Day prepping that we do.
Well, that all sounds great to me. I'm so grateful for you folks and the work that you're doing and having me on to speak a little bit. And I look forward to whatever might come in the future for all of us.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Take care. Keep doing the work.
Okay. Igualmente, likewise. Talk later.
Every day. Thanks so much, Mike.
Give thanks. Give thanks. Give thanks. Give thanks.
We'll wake the farm up.
Give thanks.
Yeah. That was incredible. Marc Williams. Find him out there at Botany every day. Incredible, bro. Love you, Mark. Check us out at Wake the Farm Up. More fun shows coming your way. We got the 144 Farms. This recording was absolutely a blast. Looking forward to sharing with you Obalaye and what he's been doing with the farm there, where he comes from, his stories. He's incredible. King. Now, what else we got? We got an amazing show coming up at Plant Walkers down in Woodshoe Hollow, Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's going to be a fun day. We'll be having a bunch of plant walkers. We'll be walking around, like learning about the plants around us and the ones that are growing. And there we'll be looking at CSAs. We'll be looking at a native plant nursery, Keystone Flora. And we'll be having an incredible recording there. We'll be talking to some amazing farmers, you know, people that go back, you know, some old school farmers. We'll be talking to some new school farmers. We'll be talking to some no school farmers. And, you know, we'll be just waking the farm up that day down there, having a good time. Look forward to that. So, hope you enjoyed this show. Oh, guess what else too, y'all? We're going to be down at the Drip again. The Drip, that's going to be so live. We're going to be down there on the Wednesday, May 12th, I believe. I better check that out before I hit record zone on that all out. But anyway, love you all. Hope you have a wonderful time. Keep on enjoying. Support the show. We need to support y'all. Love the support. We really love the support. Wake the farm up. Let me hear you say it now. Wake the farm up. Farm, wait a second. To wake the farm up. When I needed to do some farming and shit, like, all I had was a fucking hoe, right? I moved out to a piece of land, all I had was a hoe. I'm like chopping the dirt up with like a fucking hoe. I'm trying to get some shit planted so I can grow some babies and shit, right? Hoe. Farting, you know, and you're like, I need to do my thing. Hoe. One day I saw a tractor, it ran on sour diesel. So I got that thing. Now I got a seat. I can cruise along just cooking it with a little bit of sour diesel.
With your hoe?
With my hoe.
And then he got that veggie diesel.
I got the hook up on the back on the PTO. It's where I put my 3-strap shoe. It comes up where the tires just rode. And down the middle where I want to go to the seat. That's what I go and I feel my knee. I don't have to act with no kind of degree. Just be chilling there. Chilling there. Talking with the frog. Might go throw a snake for us all. Might even go downtown. I need to go see where there might be some fresh water from